The 742 Coffee Cast is your ultimate destination for insightful conversations, thought-provoking ideas, and innovative strategies in St. Cloud Area School District. Your host is Director of Community Engagement and Communications, Tammy DeLand. Grab a cup of coffee and join us. We are here today with Holly Nelson, who is a media specialist at Kennedy Community School, and we are so glad to have you with us today. Welcome.
Thank you. I have been looking forward to today for a while, and I'm always excited to share about what goes on in our schools.
That's great. That's great. We've been waiting for you. We're very excited to talk today. Do you want to start just like with a brief overview of how long you've been at Kennedy, how long in the district, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a long history with St. Cloud School District, 30 years. So this is my 30th year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And my 32nd year in education. So my first 7 years were in special education, and I was a learning disability teacher in St. Cloud. And then I moved into the third grade classroom position that I had the entire time teaching third grade at Kennedy. So I was at the old building and then moved over to the new building and continued teaching third grade. And this is my 9th year in media.
And so this question is going to seem very, very, maybe even silly, but definitely simple for you. But honestly, for our listeners, what is a media specialist? Does anyone out there know?
And it's funny that you ask, because I was just talking to someone earlier today because they weren't quite sure what to call me. And so technically in Minnesota, we are school librarians / media specialists. So we hold both titles because our profession has evolved with technology. And so we have taken on that additional title, which is fun. And so we are licensed SLMS.
More acronyms in the education world, right? Just what we needed. So can you give us an example of all of the things that fall under your umbrella? We'll come back and talk about books, but we know that part. What else falls under your umbrella?
I guess we work really hard at making sure teachers and students have resources. And so those resources might be electronic resources, and they may be digital type of tools like iPads, Chromebooks, and then we get into the curriculum and any online resources. So anything that would help a teacher teach and a student learn, we're in charge of. And so it's a pretty big job. So pretty much the one-to-one device management that gets students with their device in their hands and on a daily working basis. So when that goes awry, they usually come to us. And that involves teacher devices as well. So that's the media piece. We used to manage computer labs. So that's been replaced by one-to-one devices, which is great, because the learning that can take place outside of the four walls of a school is all day now, not just when they're coming to the computer lab. So there's some amazing advantages. So those spaces now have been repurposed.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that too. Tell us about a makerspace.
Well, makerspace would be, as someone may say, that it is kind of the messy room. But there is a lot of material in this room for creating. And we know how students developmentally love to build things, whether it's with cardboard or whatever they can find. The hope is, and the dream is, that we will give students those opportunities to have that hands-on learning and have that ownership and the collaboration with others in a space like that. And having the engineering design process being a big part of what we do through that building process. We have been able to have 2 spaces in our school, that one being the makerspace and then one being the innovation lab. That has been just a highlight of my time at Kennedy, being able to transform those 2 spaces that used to be computer labs into something very purposeful. And I think that's what media specialists as school librarians have really found their niche in offering these additional spaces for schools. And it's kind of fallen underneath our title very much wanted.
And very much about that innovation piece, right? Because you're describing manipulatives, but also having an environment that encourages, but allows imagination to take hold. It's pretty exciting. I was lucky enough to be out at Kennedy. Remember the day that you launched for One District, One Book this year? And you had the child-size hamster tunnels. And we started laughing because you brought out all the Zuzu pets from when was that? Early 90s?
Yes.
So your job title, the middle name is almost creativity or innovation, right? Because
I hope so.
You're dreaming this up.
Yes. And I don't know any other job where you can just kind of play and be surrounded by books all day long. So sign me up, right?
It's a perfect fit for you.
It is. I just have always had that creative desire inside to create and do things with kids and to bring that love of books and love of learning, and just remembering that they're kids. They want to come into a space that probably wasn't or isn't anymore a traditional type of library setting that I grew up. The library was my favorite place to go as a child, and I wanted to create a space with that same feeling. And I think that our society is different than it was when I was growing up, and to realize that students need and have different needs and wants than probably what we had from a library. And so that fun, loving kind of feeling that you get from a library where everybody is welcome.
And talk a little bit about that connection, because obviously it's so much fun, having hamster tunnels that you can, and you even said you climbed through one. That's obviously fun, but talk about the connection between creating that environment and the spark for a child to read.
Well, I think that anytime you can pull kids in and think outside of the box with their imagination, they then feel encouraged to think that way as well. So pulling the tunnels and stretching them out in the library and trying to make a human hamster cage for Humphrey for the month demonstrates like models to them that even when you're old like me, you can still be creative and share that and celebrate that. When they come into the library, it's not just about finding a book. It's about a place where you feel I'm a kid and they recognize that I'm a kid. This is going to be a fun place to hang out. And it all really started my first year that I started in the media center 9 years ago. The first book was Mr. Popper's Penguin. And I turned to the media para and I said, you may think I might be a little bit crazy, but I want to build an igloo out of milk jugs for the book. And are you in? And she said, okay. And it happened to just be a really good friend of mine as well. So I said, thanks for always, jumping into the crazy world of my imagination.
And you built it, didn't you?
We did. And it's one of my favorite memories. And of course, then I had to continue that by building quite the structure. It was a rocket. And I built it out of egg cartons. And so every year it's something. And it was really fun this year. I was worried about it being too simple, but I've learned that simple can still be really, really fun if you think like a child.
Speaking as a former English teacher, tell me about kids and books right now. We hear so much about, they're just wired into technology. Nobody reads anymore. That's a narrative, right? That's kind of on a loop. Is that what you see?
No, I don't. I really see children wanting to physically hold a book. And there's a lot of research that shows that physical involvement of turning a page, tracking on a page, looking at the pictures, and the artistry that has gone into illustrations of books has really been phenomenal. And I've watched it change over my lifetime. And I know that because every once in a while I find a little gem that's hidden from my weeding that has been missed. And you look at it and you think, wow, that is just not the style anymore. It's so vibrant, and the printing presses that have been involved with producing literature in the print form is phenomenal.
That's so reassuring. Like I said, as a former English teacher and a reader myself, to hear that, no, kids are, and that's certainly been my experience with children. Give a child a book and they are going to turn those pages. They are going to, look for that language and look for the art. But you are also so innovative, even when it comes to books. And I don't know if you know that I know this, but I am going to go to how are you using AI, artificial intelligence, to bring kids into reading?
Well, there is an app that I'm in love with called Novel Effect. What it does is it takes that experience to the listener on another level. I love to tell stories. I grew up with a dad telling stories.
Me
and
too.
We have Buck the Bear story in our family. And my dad, whenever we were in the car, was, here comes the next chapter of Buck the Bear. No matter where we drove, Buck the Bear story came out, but we didn't have electronic devices. I had a Walkman with tapes and we listened to music. I love listening to my dad tell stories. And I love reading out loud to children, especially. And when I saw the technology piece, not as a barrier, but an opportunity to embrace what is available for technology, modeling it in a way of something very useful for kids to connect with the literature that I'm reading out loud. Our students, I think, are very inundated with a lot of technology. I love technology. That's the other half of my job.
That's right.
And I love that. But there's a place and a time for that. And I do talk to them. There are times that I will read a book on my Kindle, and it's mostly because I'm traveling and I don't want this huge, heavy book. But I tell them how much I enjoy holding a book. I love the smell of the book. And one of my most fond memories of being a media specialist was actually happened this fall. And it was the first time that this particular class was coming into library. And this little girl said, I just love the smell of this place.
Oh, that's great.
And I just thought, well, I'm glad it smells good to you. You always wonder, you're in a school full of children, wonders the smells. But I said, I know. It's my favorite smell too of a new book. And so I try to remember that because there is that emotional connection that you can have to the printed book, but also the need for having that technology. I sometimes correlate it to driving, that I prefer having my phone on the dash with a GPS versus the map. And I show them a map. This is how we got around.
And they're like, what?
And they were flabbergasted. Like, that's got to be dangerous looking at a map while you're driving. I said, well, yeah, similar to looking at your phone probably too. Just, embracing that and not being afraid. And I've never been afraid of technology. And I do think that is also something that you get from your parents at times. My dad was a huge technology buff. Like we had the first, Atari Pong game and the VCR. We got a VCR and I grew up in northern Minnesota and the only place you could rent VCR tapes was in Roseville, Minnesota. So we would go to the cities to get a ton of VCR tapes and then a couple weeks later bring them back. So I know that love of technology, is kind of instilled because I watched my dad enjoy it. So that may be a part of it. I did really embrace it with the books. The AI, it listens to my voice. And when I read the book, it has voice recognition software and it will generate the sound that correlates with the word and it will bring the story alive. And I love to do voices. And I've told the students that a lot of times I'm going to have my little speaker and I have this little miniature audio pet speaker and it's a unicorn and its name is Uni. And they often will ask, where's Uni? And I said, well, you get Mrs. Nelson today for the sound effects because not all books are in there, but this app has absolutely expanded its repertoire of what's available now. I will pick a book that will be engaging, but could really use those extra sound effects. And that's what I read today was Tap the Magic Tree.
Just to describe this, so you're reading the text, but AI is supplementing with voices. Like, are they other characters?
Yes, sometimes there can be other voices. Like today, certain words that I would say would trigger sounds of a bird.
Okay, sure.
This book was highly interactive where you're tapping the book and the kids would pretend to tap the book with me. The sounds would come. It was a very simple book that became very magical.
I was just going to say magic, right?
Yeah. And it all ties in. Every book that I choose has a purpose. And I usually tie it into my computer science standards because I can relate a lot of what happens in the structures of stories to computer science. And some people think, what are you talking about? But kids understand stories.
Sure.
And if you can start
they
at
do.
that basic level and you can explain how things all around us relate to the language of machines, this is a huge part of their life. And it will only continue to become more and more. So we have to embrace that and learn with them.
And this is really a perfect segue because I really wanted to ask you today. Another little birdie told me all about your coding program. So that technology side of your job description has really come in handy. Tell me about this program. It sounds so exciting. How did it come about? What's up with it?
Well, it's really been a passion of mine. My view about technology in children is we often are consumers of technology. And we know that children are way more creative than that. We know that we don't stand in front of them and just deliver information. We know that's not how children learn developmentally. Often I wonder why college students sit through hours and hours of lectures.
How we did it.
They have not gotten the memo yet up there at higher ed. They could learn a lot from us. But anyways, I know that kids want to be engaged with things. And when I look at what they're exposed to all day long is a lot of electronics. So let's use that interest and really engage them and become creators and become innovators. They're going to make a difference in their own life and other people's lives with that type of thinking. A lot of times it's misunderstood that, oh, you just do robots. And the forefront of my thinking and my lessons and the things that I do with students is purely on the aspect of building problem solvers, developing critical thinking skills, and really thinking outside of the box, and then also being a collaborator of information. And that has to start at a really young age. And we know that kindergartners coming into our schools, they like to talk and they like to be with their friends.
Yeah.
Let's use those childlike desires to our benefit for teaching them to be really creators, designers of our world.
Designer versus consumer. I like that.
I love technology and I do consume a lot of technology myself. I love creating. I know when I get on, like today, I just was excited because I am looking to do a lesson next week with the Very Impatient Caterpillar book, which is hilarious, by the way. And how am I going to incorporate that with our technology?
And that's how young you start, right?
Oh, yeah.
You start with babies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing.
And what I've watched them do today will blow your mind. They really are smart. They really can do some pretty complex things. Their problem solving, their critical thinking today, the way they connected the story was tap a magic tree. What happens is the discussion of the book of the life cycle of a tree. And I'm like, that's a pattern. They're like, yes. And then I say, like in math, when you do patterns, do you do A-B patterns? They're like, yeah. Now we do ABC patterns. And I said, well, the life cycle of a tree is like that. It has these set things that it does. And then we talked about how the tree will have its leaves, it'll get its blossoms. And that's what they're learning in kindergarten in their classroom.
Layering of learning. Yeah.
Just that constant. And then when we're all done, I said, now this happens with all apple trees. So how could we code that? Nature has coded them to do this. And I said, that is like when we're computer coding, when we're working in the innovation lab and we're coding a machine and we leave out something and it doesn't work, we have to debug it. They're like, oh yeah. The whole concept of the story and weaving that literature piece into the technology and the understanding brings it to that level of picturing something, being able to really critically think about that. So we get into the innovation lab then today after that, and we do loops. If you know much about computer science, loops is a repeated pattern. So instead of repeating a direction, forward, backwards, turn right, that would be something that we could repeat many, many times. So we wouldn't want to do that same code over and over and over again, writing all of that out. We would do it one time and put it into, if this happens, we're going to do this many times. And they understand that. it amazes me that they are learning loops of computer science in kindergarten. And so my whole hope is that we build that capacity. My kindergartners from last year now are first graders, and they use a different tool, and it's a mouse that we code. And that mouse, then we take then the next level. And so really understanding those computer science standards is important. I'm constantly looking at, okay, what's the next level? What skill are we going to build? Because I'm not a computer scientist. I mean, I've had to learn with them. And I think that is so meets my needs because I am always a learner. And teachers are learners all the time. And it satisfies my desire for that continual learning. So I'm excited because then when we get to second grade, and this is a new robot this year, and it's the Indy. That is the robot Jean Voigt.
Yes.
And I said to them last spring, I said, are you willing to go down this crazy road with me? And they said, okay. And they blindly go into it because I think they trust me that I'm not going to, do something that is not going to have great purpose. It's been just really amazing experience to watch these kids go from kindergarten, first grade to second grade and see what they do.
Oh, yes.
And their excitement is amazing.
Listening to you and all those multiple hats that you wear, I mean, I could almost put the CTE hat on you because listening to you and this process and the layering of learning as we call it a cohort, as the children go on, that is very purposeful toward our college and career goals also. And again, we're talking about 5 and 6 year olds. If you ask average 5 or 6 year old, oh, what do you want to be? Is coder what comes up now? Like that's not the normal answer, but look at what you're doing. You're building a foundation. Do you ever think about that?
I do a lot, actually, because I want kids to be those critical thinkers. I want them to be the problem solvers. And I want them to take that into whatever profession. I do not have my forefront goal to be producing computer scientists.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
That would be a fun, result of what we're doing because we need them. I tell the kids too, a lot of times, and teachers will hear me say this when they come into the innovation lab, all jobs use this critical thinking skill.
Absolutely.
And I tell them that one of the main things is to be able to collaborate with each other, to get along. And so today, my objective wasn't even necessarily the coding today and that skill. That's a great result, but collaborating with each other. One was in charge of the robot, one was in charge of the iPad, and then it was deciding what the code was going to be. And so that very structured approach to it, where all kids know that their input is going to be included and that they have a job when they're doing it. And then they're having fun. They don't even realize,
Yeah.
Right. But I tell them electricians need to be problem solvers, designers, teachers, doctors, bus drivers, everybody, manager at McDonald's. We all have to collaborate and get along.
And you're absolutely right. You don't have to be training them to be computer scientists. What you're describing is complex thinking, which is going to get them anywhere and in any situation. We recently had, I don't know if you were able to hear it or not, but we recently had 3 young women from tech who do the morning show. And they were absolutely delightful. And I asked them, because they did a very good job of not just talking about their exciting projects, but talking about process. And they talked about the hard parts. They talked about editing. They all agreed, editing, right? And any of us who've done this work, we know that's like 3-4 times the amount of work to actually do the recording. But so I asked them, because they all were really, really thoughtful about the process. I asked them, I said, so tell me about your future. What are you going to be? And, not one of those young women is interested in a broadcasting career in production. Not one of them. But they were very self-aware that the skills that they were learning doing the Tech Morning Show, video, editing, interviewing, collaborating as a team to put out a story. One of the young women did a documentary on her own. They were very aware that no matter what they chose to be, this was going to help them. And I was really blown away by that. And that's exactly what you're describing, but with much younger kids.
Yeah, definitely. They will hear me say many, many times, if you ask them, when do you learn the most? And they said, when you make mistakes and you fail. And that really is the truth. Computer science requires a lot of perseverance, and critical thinking requires that really kind of stick to it kind of attitude and working out a problem. And we do have students that really they feel very uncomfortable with mistakes and failure.
I was just going to ask, tell me about confidence now.
Huge. I can't tell you anything that is better than watching a student solve a problem with their code, realizing that it took them a long time, and just encouraging them. Say, do you feel frustrated? And I will model that. I will say, I'm frustrated right now because I can't figure this out. And sometimes we have to walk away. So they know if they get into a situation where they're frustrated and they can't follow the Colt way, where they're going to be safe, kind, and responsible, they have an opportunity to just go outside of the innovation lab, sit in a chair, and just come back when they're ready. And I said, that's okay. That's part of being a human. And frustration is an emotion.
The smart choice.
It is. And anger and frustration. But then it's what we do with all of that. You may experience that, but you're going to remember how you solved that problem for a very long time. And I love having the approach too of them teaching others. And so being with students that needs a little bit of their own mentoring, and that they are able to do that and share that.
And that's confidence building.
It is.
Yeah. To be able to help, to be able to teach someone else.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Holly, I'm wondering, we're so lucky. I'm listening to you and we're just so lucky you're here. I'm listening to you and I'm just wondering a little bit more about your story, how you got from that third grade classroom. How did you get here?
Well, it's interesting because it started, the computer science piece started probably about 10 years ago, but really it goes back a really long time ago. I remember being a third grade teacher at the old Kennedy, and I wanted a way for kids to direct their own learning, being their director per se. I never wanted, or I would never fall into that thinking of, well, you only have one computer. What can you do? I'm like, well, look at what Apple was built on, one computer. Okay?
In a garage.
So you're only limited by the limitations you create. So I would embrace every opportunity that I could. And so the WebQuest then moved on to podcasts. We had a podcast of third graders that then they shared that with families through email. And that was a long time ago. That was probably before we moved into the new building, and the kids loved it. And when we got into the new building and those smart boards blew my mind, because if anybody knew how my classroom looked in the old building, I made my own smart board and they thought, what is she doing? And I had a projector that wasn't being used. It was a portable projector, which in itself was amazing. And Dwayne Hagen.
I remember Dwayne.
Oh, I love Dwayne. Yeah. Dwayne, it was kind of my mentor, and I said, Dwayne, I have a crazy idea again. And I'm sure whenever I came in his office, he's like, oh, I think I got to go get more coffee or something. Here she comes with another crazy idea. But he just was really good at encouraging. And I still communicate with him. And he said, yep, if nobody's using that projector, let's put it on a cart. And I had purchased with my own money, the MacBook Pro, the first one that came out. And it weighed a lot. I'm just telling you. It is. They've really improved. I'm just saying. And I turned every story in the Wonders curriculum into a keynote.
Oh my gosh, Collie.
Every single story was a keynote presentation. And I had hyperlinks. Nobody really knew what that was.
I do. I remember.
And I put hyperlinks into
Did
that.
you use HyperStudio? Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
HyperStudio.
Yeah. It's crazy. I forgot about that one.
Early animation.
Yeah. I just wanted to interact with kids and have all of those resources in one place immediately. And so I projected that onto the pull down screen, which was in front of a chalkboard. So it had every oxymoron that you could,
Oh, you're killing me. That's hilarious.
Chalkboard and chalk. And then we had a screen, but then we had this makeshift. So it was this conglomerate of crazy ideas that I was always looking for something new. And I think that's what made it very natural for me to move into the media world, the school library media
It doesn't
world.
sound like it was a very big jump.
It was not. And it just fell into my lap at, we all are on this journey that we don't always know what roads, and they work out. And Chris Erickson was a great help at the beginning too.
Was he a media specialist?
He was a media specialist. Yep. And then Paul Olson, and Paul was great. And us as a group is fun. I wish we had more time together because we all have so many amazing things too. I by no means am the only person that's got the corner market on fun ideas in 742 with media specialists. So moving into that new building just really jump-started my love of technology. And probably my most memorable last type of technology thing that I did with my third graders was I used augmented reality. If you know much about augmented reality, where you superimpose like a video action on top of a still type of shot. And so I would take a picture of the students and videotape them explaining their life if they lived in a snow globe. When the parents came to conferences, I had an iPad, and I had one iPad. And
Just one.
And it was an iPad that I bought. They're standing at their child's locker and they scan this picture of their child looking like they're in a snow globe, because I went in to the media center and I said, can I borrow one of your really big windows? And I turned it into a snow globe. Made the kids go outside, and we took a picture of them inside the library. So it looked like they were in a snow globe. And I was like, again, knowing my crazy ideas, they were okay with it. But the parents then scanned that with the AR app, and all of a sudden the screen lit up with their child telling them a story. And it's just so fun. It's just, and it was one iPad.
And so engaging. Just so engaging. There's another element as I'm listening to you that I think is of critical importance. I hear your ideas spool out, and that's curiosity. Talk about curiosity.
There's so much that our students have. They're just bursting with curiosity. That's childhood. And unfortunately, as adults, we become less and less curious. That's why I think probably why I love being with kids, because sometimes I feel maybe a little bit too curious as an adult, but then I have an outlet though. So that's my favorite part of my job, is just watching kids and figuring out what they like to learn about. I went into this crazy adventure a couple years ago when I started the Girls Who Code. And it really started with the Super Bowl commercial of Girls Who Code. And I had read about the woman that started this in New York City, that she was able to get a Super Bowl commercial as a nonprofit. Blew my mind. She's innovative. She has figured out how to get this ad. I want to know what she's all about. And the more and more that I read about her, the more and more that I understand about computer science. There is a mentor group, that is a cohort that meets during the school year that you apply for. Cool. And it's called Code Savvy. And Code Savvy is a nonprofit organization that pays off of Computer Science for All, which is a national organization. The Code Savvy brings teachers voluntarily together on Saturdays throughout the school year, and we explore computer science. We explore how we integrate computational thinking into what we're doing with students. And this group has grown and grown and grown. And the leader and the founder of that is Andrea Vesquez. And she is now works for the Department of Education as our computer science person.
That feels good, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Andrea is amazing. And so she has taken this grassroots movement and just really knows how important it is to the state of Minnesota students that we need this. Really excited for the standards because I know how important they are. And the reason why I chose the Girls Who Code is there is just very little female representation that is in the computer science world. And I explain to students, girls and adults, when they ask, why not boys? And I said, that's mostly who's in computer science. They don't really need encouragement. And I know growing up, not seeing females in certain professions it just makes a difference. We know it. And I know that in our literature, you need to be able to see yourself in a book. And that's our job as school librarians, is to make sure that we have literature where all students, when they walk in that library, it's our job to make sure that they can see themselves in a book. It goes for the same for professions. To think back, there were no female physicians. My dad was a physician, and there were no female physicians. They were secretaries in his office, or nurses.
I was going to say, or if nurses. You were interested in medicine, you could be a nurse.
Right. And it just wasn't a common thing. And now I look now and wow, my youngest, she's 20 and she goes, I'm going to be a PA, Mom. And they love science, and I love science, and that curiosity of why does that happen? I want to know more. And I've got so many childhood stories of myself and my children of how curiosity has really, once in a while, gotten the best of us, but has been just fueled. And I know my oldest, who's in the medical field, he came home in 5th grade and they dissected eyeballs. He explained to me, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I got to do something like that. We really do have an incredible job to spark that curiosity. And I think I see so much of that when I deal with the computer science piece, because of that curiosity and then just that love of learning. You're always a learner. And I want kids to remember that, I guess, and see the leadership skills that come with the Girls Who Code. Some of my students have expressed this strong desire to teach others. And I'm thinking, you could be a teacher someday. They love to go in and share what they're doing and teach their friends in class. We've been doing that for the last 2 years. And it's not even just the computer science. We have VR headsets that haven't really gone off the charger a whole lot. I'm like, okay, what can I do? Because it's a great tool. All of these pieces of technology are tools, and how we can integrate them and have it be very purposeful. And I thought it can be kind of scary for teachers, technology, because we have so much that we have to do. And how do you really truly integrate that is don't do more, just do it differently.
Going back to curiosity, I think technology becomes that two-sided coin, right? Because technology is so prevalent now. Technology can actually squelch curiosity, right? After a while.
I believe so.
And so the intentionality that you're describing, that's the difference. And reminding kids that they're kids and, oh yeah, you want to know why, right? They and you're right. That's an innate thing.
Right. They crave that. They crave that need to create. And so it's not surprising that an app like TikTok exploded because you consume, but they get tired of that. They want to create. And what do they do?
For better and worse.
They create. And so let's take that passion and have it purposeful. Use that. Giving kids a voice. And it's such a great tool for our older students. They want to be heard and they want to have a say. There's just so many tools. And I think the more tools we have in our toolbox, and
that's right.
And some are more scary than others. One of the challenges of my job sometimes is I know how awesome it is. And I feel comfortable with that. I also feel comfortable with things not going exactly how we plan them. We get into a lesson and I'm okay with not knowing all of it.
That's a vulnerability, right? Like that you're okay with it is key because you have to be willing to be able to stub your toe and not have things go right sometimes.
So I really want teachers to know that we don't expect them to be perfect when we're using these tools, and to reach out and ask for help, or even, let me lead the way and you hop on for the ride. And I think that's what I've seen happening in the last 2-3 years with some of the things that I've done. Kennedy is a great environment to have. Some of our older students will come at times. Like today we had 2 upper level grade students come and help out the second graders today, and they're learning right alongside them. And
I bet they love it.
They do. And then they see those kids in the hallway, or they see, and they're like, that gives them a purpose to be good role models. They're looking up to me. I have this relationship with them. It's all about those relationships. I have, in my opinion, the best job because I get them from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. And it's that, maybe not as once they get to 8th grade, are they always that, they become teenagers. We know, we've been around long enough to know they aren't the same little kindergartner that wanted to give you a hug goodbye. But they still have that little glimmer in their eye where they know, like, yeah, this is a cool place.
I'm really glad you went in this direction because before having you in today, I rewatched a video that we did quite a few years ago. And you did a video for us about being a media specialist.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And I was listening before you came, and you talk in that video about being a part of this really special Kennedy community. What is it that you think helps make Kennedy such a special place to learn and to teach?
That K-8 feel, we see students for a lot longer. There's different perspectives that are shared when you have elementary and secondary. They see how students start out, and we get to see where they end up because they often leave elementary school and we don't get to have those relationships down the road.
Secondary is a big leap. Yep.
It is. And I think that at times can be very challenging for us, but also be a blessing at the same time. I've watched a lot of teachers come and go, and I've watched some of my very best friends retire, and it's like, oh, I miss them. And then you get this, new teacher. And I talked to one of them today and I said, hey, do you want to do this with me? And you kind of look for the ones that are okay to be guinea pigs with you. I'm like, do you want to build like a virtual field trip for your students since you're not going on one this year? And she's like, yeah, because she lit up. And I'm like, oh, I love those 22 and 23-year-olds.
That's right.
And
come into my makerspace.
Come. I feel like a wizard.
That's
Follow
great.
me. But I get excited. I get people say nobody's going into teaching. And I say, well, I think you said that to the wrong person. I said, because my daughter's 23 and she's student teaching right now. And you ask her, what do you want to do? She goes, I just want to be with 2nd or 3rd graders. And is it a hard job? Absolutely. She'll call me and I can tell in her voice, this was a challenging day today, wasn't it? She goes, yep, but I can be there for her. Yeah. She can call and tell me, this is what happened. We'll be a little emotional together. I'm kind of an emotional person, if you know me. And I'll say, that's right. Tomorrow's a new day. People say everything you need to learn, you learn in kindergarten. My first year of teaching, everything you need to learn, you learn in your first year of what to do and what not to do. And my first year of teaching, I was an EBD teacher in a K-12 school in a very rural area of Minnesota.
So you were everything.
I was
to
everything
everyone.
To everybody. And so I tell her, you're going to have those days. Don't throw in the towel and make sure you have good work-life balance. And she has some fabulous hobbies and she loves what she has in store for her. And she's so ready. And teaching changes and people say, oh, it's so difficult. But you know what? Kids are kids. They're curious. You love that piece of the job. And then you'll you'll be around for a really long time if you can keep that love of learning and that curiosity and be able to see that in kids. And we wouldn't be here without the teachers we had. So it's a very honorable profession. It's a very difficult profession, but it is just so worth it. And I'm glad that
I don't think you could imagine doing anything else.
No, because
except maybe reading audiobooks.
There you go, audiobooks. I told you, yes, this microphone is really impressive. This has got me renewed again.
Well, there you go. You've got your second wave in retirement if that day ever comes.
I think so. You know, you just never stop learning, no matter how old you are. And I had a health event in November and decided that I needed something to do in the evening relaxing. And I picked up embroidery and I thought, well, I'm not going to go find who's going to teach me how to do it. Of course, YouTube.
Do you know how I knew to fill that in?
Yeah.
My daughter. My daughter taught herself to knit on YouTube.
There you go. And again, I think about what our kids can learn now from technology. It's amazing that I have this hobby that I'm so passionate about now.
And there's no fear.
No.
I can't imagine myself. You're much braver than I am. I can't imagine myself sitting down with I would be so intimidated. And yeah, same thing. There's no fear.
No, there isn't.
I can learn in my living room.
It's amazing. And I think we forget about these kids. You know, I call them kids. They're in their 20s, you know, that they have that at their disposal. None of them, all the kids that are living right now in schools they've never
been without it.
They haven't. And so we may think, in the olden days, or we can't live backwards. We have to live forward. And even when it's scary, I just know that when my husband and our oldest daughter can YouTube how to fix the boat motor last summer and pull it out of the water and put in a different little piece in the lower unit, and they figured it out on YouTube. There's a lot of hope out there.
That's right. A lot of hope. Holly, I thank you for all you do, and thanks for coming today. And this is our very special gift for all our guests. We have a very... Isn't that cute? It's
that is so great.
Do you have a great podcast idea? Submit your idea to communications@isd742.org. And thank you for listening to 742 Coffee Cast, the best place to stay informed and be inspired by St. Cloud Area School District.